The following is an interview I did with Jim Smith on April 27th, 2018, and we discuss cases that have occurred involving this phenomenon commonly known as the smiley face killers. Our last talk was in November, so it's been about 5 months. So here's myself and Jim Smith catching up with recent cases associated with what's known as the smiley face killings. Jim, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, William. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for being back, and also thank you for just covering these cases and keeping your eye on this phenomenon because it's still happening. As you know, I put out my movie in late October, which you were the primary researcher, and I think that movie, in addition to our podcast, has kind of created an interest in this phenomenon. A lot of people are kind of catching on to this pattern. But tonight we're going to start out with a recent discovery of a body of a young man in Hamburg, Germany. He disappeared on February 10th of 2018. He was found 4 days ago. His name was Liam Colgan. And so he was gone, missing for over 2 months, but found in water just like the rest of them. Do you have any comment on that, Jim?
Yeah, just pretty tragic, obviously. I think you and I and a couple other people, we knew immediately when we read the story after it got out, after he couldn't be found. And, poor kid, this is obviously another drowning abduction. It's interesting that it's in Germany. For people who there's such a misconception, I think it's a great time to point this out that, people think it's one killer, 40 men in the Midwest. I mean, I get that question all the time, and this is so much bigger than that. This is international now. Liam is not the only victim I've ever seen in Germany. I've seen other victims too. Have you? You ever seen any other victims in Germany?
I have not. Only in France, Amsterdam, in that area. Hamburg is actually fairly close to Amsterdam, but not as many as I liked. I think it's just really an issue of language. I think what's interesting about this case is you have a guy from Scotland, so all the coverage of his disappearance is in English, which makes it easier to track and trace.
Yeah, that's funny that he's from Scotland. That's you know who else was from Scotland?
Right, there was it Charlie? Not Charlie Pope. It was
Corey McKeague.
Corey McKeague was from Scottish. That's correct. But there was another kid. What was the guy who recently disappeared? And they were looking at him on the St. Andrews golf course. That was it Dean Tate? No, it was Duncan Sim.
Duncan Sim.
Still missing. Disappeared.
Still have
March 13th.
Not found him.
Correct. But
been searching. But back, no, you're right. Back to Liam though. Just even looks like victim. I mean, so interesting that. Just absolutely another case in Germany, just seeing the spread like a virus.
Right. No, I totally agree. It's the same MO. I kind of came to the conclusion in the film that there was some kind of communication through the internet, and I think that this MO has been transferred internationally. One of the fascinating things about the Colgan case is that he was discovered on Monday morning, 6:30, which in a lot of cases, a lot of these bodies are dumped on Sundays, which seems to be a more quiet time. Have you found that to be the case?
Oh, for sure. That you bring up another great point about his body was found just recently. They had a whole nother media push because his brother had come back, was back to the city to look for him again, and his body was found a couple of days later. They were receiving reports that people were seeing him around. They thought maybe he had a mental breakdown. And to me, it's so suspicious that they're receiving reports or sightings of him, and it's almost like taunting. I've seen that in other cases where people will say that, oh, yeah, we're getting reports, and then they found the missing guy in water. Very interesting.
Yeah, amazing. And it's very similar in kind of the large search that took place, immense amount of leaflets. They said in one article on the Independent UK, 300,000 leaflets were put out. So it's similar to so many other cases, people looking for him, but tragically found dead in water. And so there's a recent case just within the last week.
Yeah, the case I was going to mention reference was in 2016. Was a German soccer player, pretty famous guy. He was 34. He was leaving a Christmas party and disappeared, found in the river. His name was Steve Gohuri.
Do you remember what city that was in?
Yeah, it was in doesn't say. I don't remember.
Because there was somebody who was telling me about another soccer player who ended up in water out of Poland, like somewhere in East Germany or that kind of area.
Yeah, seen a lot of soccer players. Various. We've had a couple here in Georgia, people who were very big soccer athletes. The same as the wrestlers, right? A lot of wrestlers, a lot of baseball players. Couple football players, but soccer, a ton. I mean, I could think of multiple victims off the top of my head who were like all-state soccer, college soccer.
Well, they fit the kind of, body mass index profile, right? Healthy,
Yep.
Athletic. So, that Liam Colgan's a tragic case. I mean, we can also talk about, what I brought up about, was it Pope, the guy who was found in
Charlie
Scotland.
Pope.
The Duncan Sim. There was Charlie Pope. Duncan Sim was the kid in Scotland who hasn't been found.
Yes.
That was another night out drinking, just like Liam Colgan, right?
Same. Yep. They keep, again, searching for in the ditches and the canals there, and he has not been found.
Gotcha.
Night out, good-looking, young student, 19 years old, and vanished, gone.
Yeah, that's a remarkable case. And what was the other one that you were mentioning? It was Pucker? No. Was it Stephen Dyson? Was that the one that happened recently?
I'm not familiar with that. That's in the UK?
Yeah. Well, maybe we can just jump to the one thing we were talking about before we started recording, which was the death in the United States of CDC worker Timothy Cunningham.
Yeah, that's another case. I thought I was definitely involved. Tim Cunningham's case, he worked for the CDC. He vanished, a little older than most people, but, was found in a creek, half submerged, half in, half out, where they had searched multiple times. And, to me, his cause of drowning was accidental drowning, of course. And the text messages. There's text messages that the media won't release, or, not really the media, the police won't release, but they said that they're disturbing.
Wow, interesting. So that would fit in with many other cases as well.
Not many cases, right?
Joey LaBute had that GSTION or whatever.
Left his house, left his cell phone, gone, right? Early morning, very interesting. People kept sending that case to me, and I didn't think it was involved until he was found, and I'm absolutely convinced that people who are doing all this, that he's connected to, however, right? Some other things I won't mention.
It's the same MO, right? I mean, he's in a very remote area. He's, I think it was publicly known that he was homosexual. There's a lot of things going on there.
Yeah. He was one of the most influential people under 40 in Atlanta.
Interesting.
Been a lot of conspiracy theories about if he knew too much, but if he'd have been really murdered for something else, wouldn't his cause of death been something other than accidental drowning? Right. That's why to me, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but when people talk about these cases and they try to say, well, it's just a serial killer, or this, or it's accidents, or why are the people brought back to exactly where people looked over and over and over again? I mean, if it was just murder, you could bury people wherever you want, get rid of bodies,
disappear them, right? Just take them out on a boat, take them out to the ocean,
never be found. Yeah. Not putting people exactly where people have been searching. I mean,
it's remarkable.
Yeah, it's really growing.
I mean, one that was like that, I kind of tied it to Timothy Cunningham, was Barrington Wisenant, who died last year. He was an attorney in Florida and ended up in the ocean with a gunshot to his head. I think that was ruled a suicide. So, that was another strange case. But we haven't talked in a while. Do you remember the case of Casper Blackburn?
Yes,
that was
I do.
A Manchester case.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that was another highly suspicious case of a young man who fits the profile ending up in a canal in Manchester. He was last seen October 1st or something like that. And then found so much later.
So many in Manchester. I mean, again, almost over 100 cases, maybe even more. And that's just in Manchester. It seems to be the worst of all the states or all the cities in Europe.
And there's another one, Stephen Dyson, on New Year's that I have from Manchester. And just to let the public know, a guy who I've interviewed before, who Jim Smith has talked to, who lives in Manchester, his name's Gary J., is in the process of making a documentary about this subject. So keep an eye out for that. He's been on the ground there forever following these cases. They call it, there in Manchester, they call it the Manchester Pusher.
The Pusher.
Yeah, the Pusher, which, is just another one of those kind of semi-misnomers because, it doesn't take into account the phenomenon happening in other cities and countries.
No, for sure. I mean, Gary is a great guy. He's doing a lot of work. I would say he's doing the most work of anybody in Europe about what's going on, besides yourself here in America and myself here in America. Gary's, doing great work. Got a documentary coming out. I'm pretty excited to see what, perspective he brings. He's been interviewing families. He's really doing the dirty work, going to crime scenes, looking for graffiti, trying to piece this together. We've had many discussions about the eerie similarities that what's going on there that's happening here in America too.
Yeah, those are great points. And just one thing that he told me was a case that I covered in my documentary, Suvik Pal. He told me that the father told him, the father of Suvik Pal, who, was out on the streets handing out flyers, wondering where his son was. He said that his son was found in a place that had already been searched. So it fits right in with what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, you look at the victims list. I've seen a bunch of the victims in Manchester, and man, they look exactly like the American victims. It's insane. The similarities, the days, it's so funny that people even consider that they just had somebody get pushed into the river and they made a big deal. And I don't know if it was a hoax or not. It certainly seemed like it. But the whole notion that anybody could be pushed into a canal, even how drunk you were, and you can't get out, is preposterous. That is not what's going on. That's the same here in America where, people try to say, oh, it's one killer. No, one man could not abduct another man singularly by themselves. That's fantasy. Maybe if they were drugged, but people would still be able to see. You wouldn't be able to be so quick. It takes a lot of work and planning what's going on. I had somebody just say something on Facebook about these being like crocodiles, and I think that's a great description of what's going on. That they are laying and waiting for the absolute right time, and when that happens, boom, it's on, and they snap their prey. And my friend on Facebook made another point, and he was saying that if the story and information gets out that a young man's missing immediately, he's murdered very quickly.
Interesting.
So when it's not, it goes longer, and the people are held longer. And wow. I totally concur with that.
That's new to me. I never made that conclusion. That's fascinating. So if it's a real intense search, they show up within the next couple days, 3 days or something like that.
Right. If the story spreads like on the media quickly, right? Wow, that seems the way it's been most recently. we seem to be in that kind of cycle right now too. It's the end of the month. Today is the 27th. I saw multiple stories today of body after body after body after body found in the water in the last 2 days. I mean, none for weeks, days. I'm following the same services, and then all of a sudden, bam, 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 and all of them hadn't been identified. But I absolutely expect it to be a bunch young males for sure. Amazing. Don't you? Have you seen that last couple of days? Just out of curiosity.
I just haven't had my nose to the ground, to be honest with you, but it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. I think, by the way, I hate to cut you off, but I think your documentary was great, and I just can't thank you enough for the work and time and blood, sweat, and tears you put into that, and, to just try to educate people so they can talk to their children and people to be aware. I mean, I can't thank you enough. I don't think you have been recognized enough. I thought it was really good. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Definitely. That was probably a years and a half work. I probably started really researching it. Goes back to Joey LaBute, who also had a weird text too. That's right. We talked about that. But yeah, it's good year and a half work. So, I mean, it's long. My documentary is like 3.5 hours, but I think I disproved conclusively that, these people were not too drunk to drown. That so many of my cases that I looked at, they were clearly not too inebriated to text or walk or anything like that. So, yeah.
I mean, who has shown more in the last multiple years? You have. Nobody. Nobody has put so many cases together. I mean, that's why it's great to see a new perspective than just an old story recycled. And to me, like the 40 Men in the Midwest with Detective Gannon and Professor Gilbertson many years ago, that was just the first act. We're way down into this, what's going on. This is grown, changed, right? They used to just hunt people in clubs. Now they hunt people at sporting events, concerts. Yep. They use apps, right? Let's talk about that, right? How many men it seems to be using Grindr or these online sex hookup acts and are being lured.
Dakota James, Vedder, Joey LaBute. I mean, that's where it starts. It's even more than that, probably. So, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. If you look at the guy that I covered in my documentary, he was meeting all of his men through apps, He wasn't drowning them, but he was giving them GHB. So, yeah, it's definitely morphing. You got to give credit, too, as well, to Gannon and Gilbertson for sticking their necks out and writing that book. Because if they hadn't written that book, the documentary that I made would not be as complete, without question. So, they have to get the credit for writing case studies in drowning forensics and being the first ones to really identify this. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Detective Gannon and Professor Gilbertson are heroes personally of mine. I have great respect for them for sticking their neck out. And, I personally have heard about how they were treated by people who called them monsters and, basically treated them like witches. They were the first people to even stick their neck out and even say what was going on.
It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage, and you respect them for taking a position that nobody else had, and that a lot of people, contradicted or said that these are just simple drownings. I don't believe that at all.
Yeah. Hey, about their book though, let's, I know we've had a lot of these, but anybody that's interested in these cases or thinks this isn't happening, and there are a lot of people out there who don't think this is happening, they should all start by reading Drowning Forensics by Detective Gannon and Professor Gilbertson. Start there.
I agree.
Right? Totally agree. If you haven't read that book, I don't think you really know what you're talking about. And I mean that respectfully to people who are very interested in this. But until you've read that book, and that is the basis of all the work that people have done, like you just said, until you've read that, you don't understand what's going on. They even called it, when that book was written in 2008 about what's happening in Europe. We're sitting here talking about how it's connected. They even called it, about what's going on. In fact, I have yet to find anything that's non-factual in that book. Nothing.
Well, likewise, I would say the same thing. I found it all to be credible and very detailed. So I always mention it in pretty much every interview that I do outside of you. I always say case studies in forensic drownings, Gilbertson and Gannon. So I wanted to talk to Gilbertson. I probably called Gilbertson at his office 5 or 6 times, but it just never happened. I never could find the Gannon contact, and then it was kind of too late. So it's unfortunate that never happened.
Yeah, good folks. Who knows? Maybe they'll talk to you guys sometime. I know that you and I both have been trying to advance this issue any way we can. I mean, without setting our hair on fire, to try to help people, because we feel so strongly. Me personally, I know you are too. Just being Americans, right, and not accepting people's lives being ruined in America.
I mean, there people are being murdered, as within the month, probably within a month of this. We already had Liam Colgan. There'll probably be a couple more deaths of this kind of MO within the next few months of kids who never got warned that there are predators out there drugging young men. So I hope that you and me talking and trying to get the word out, it prevents any of those deaths. Those families are destroyed. Talk about, like, you see these very sad videos of parents begging for their kid to come home. One that comes to mind is Zachary Marr. His dad's like, just come home.
Please.
Yeah. And then his kid is found dead in the water. So there's some very cold-blooded monsters out there, predators who are predating on this kind of group.
Yeah, for sure. Shouldn't happen. It's just really tragic. That's kind of what drives me. It really does. That's seeing people's stories of families destroyed and how they're treated, and the so many questions left unanswered, and people just haven't seen enough to understand what's going on. That's why it's been my whole goal, was to be able to put the cases together so people can view them like your movie and ingest and see what's going on. Because when you read multiple cases and you start to see, it's impossible to deny.
Right, that pattern is there. Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about what happened just in Eau Claire again. Just this week. For the people again who deny what's going on, and I think it's important when we talk about this and talk about the people who make excuses and who try to say that this is alcohol or accidents, when this is not accidents. I mean, in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which they just had 3 men all disappear in December. We've talked about it. We talked about it probably in our last podcast or last chat. Well, all 3 men went missing within 19 days of each other. All 3 men have been found in water. All accidental drowning.
And so what are they attributing it to? Supposedly it was cold and they fell in the river?
Well, one of them got out and was running from the police. He was in a car and he was being stopped with somebody else. He got out of the car and ran into the woods. Wasn't seen again. They found him in the river a couple weeks later. There was another guy. His name was Brian Reese. He just vanished. People speculated he was trying to do a shortcut, and that the ice was thin, so he fell in and he died. And then there was another guy named Brendan Felton, and he disappeared supposedly downtown. He was 25 years old, and he was just found in the river. All 3 men, cause of death was accidental drowning. So some people would like to say that's a coincidence.
That's pretty.
I don't call that a coincidence. I call that a cluster, right?
I would, and that's in addition to the other deaths that have happened there within the last 20, 25 years,
many.
right? Yeah.
Many. Yeah, in fact, I was going to say there's a river. There used to be a river watch in La Crosse, right? It's been chronicled. I know a guy that was in it. He's a pretty brave guy. And when they were having all the murders in La Crosse, they started a river watch. And a lot of people speculate that when they did that, the murders they did stop for the most part in La Crosse. There are some, but they moved to this town, which doesn't have cameras or a river watch. So.
Interesting. Yeah, so you've got 3 there, Eau Claire, within the last, 3-4 months.
It was one in Green Bay 2 months ago.
What was their name?
That gentleman's name was I forget. Ryan Reeby. Ryan Reeby. He supposedly was riding his bike. He vanished last year too. I believe it was in December. Same way. They found bike tracks out to the ice, and he was under the ice. But they found his bike on the side of the canal. Again, they tried to say it was a tragic accident. I don't think so. So, 4 men in a matter of just a couple months, all drowned, young men. I mean, but Wisconsin's so used to this. This has been going on. They've been one of the worst states for 15 years. Same as Minnesota, right? Constant traffic of men murdered, drowned. That the media definitely in both those states, they work really hard to say that nothing's happening.
That's true. They don't want to ever admit that there's a problem.
Oh, I mean, they try to make excuses. I mean, when you just read the stories, and that's another good point about the media. I'll tell you, that's what's going on in Boston right now. Commissioner Evans, by the way, the police department up there is very anti-Second Amendment, and they are blacking out any information when men are being found in the rivers in Boston. As much as possible, the media too. I mean, and they've been very vocal about saying these are not murders and that these are all accidents that have happened up in Boston. And I would say the most aggressive of any of the states or local government or police about pushing back that these are accidents, even though, right, that the last victim they found when he vanished was right where Zach Marr was found. Right. That's the first place they started looking for him. So
wow, that's amazing.
That's another strange coincidence, William.
Oh man, well I think that's the same way in all those. Pittsburgh did the same thing, right?
Yes.
Did the mayor in Pittsburgh say, "There's nothing to worry about here. This is not a problem." Blah blah blah.
Yeah, he took a lot of heat. He's the first politician I saw take heat from people, the Dakota James family on Twitter, and it really seemed to work. Especially the mayor, Bill.
I can't remember.
Anyway, yeah.
No, but it's interesting. When I was talking to Derek Gilbert of Skywatch TV, he directly keyed into the Jaws and Amityville. There's nothing to worry about, nothing scary. This whole connection to a fictional film where they're telling the public there's not a shark in the water.
Great point. Yeah.
So,
pretty scary.
Yeah, really scary. I mean, we can bounce back to the UK, talk about Charlie Pope, gay
Let's
Manchester.
talk about Ryan Shattucka.
All right, let's do it. Ryan Shattucka.
Right? You know anything about Ryan Shattucka?
I must have missed that one.
He's in Canada, young man walking home at night from a party by himself. He has vanished. This is
yes, I knew Ryan Shattucka.
Yes.
They're still searching for him.
Oh, yeah, up in Sun Peaks, right? It's been, I would say, probably the biggest case right now in North America of one of these cases that's gotten probably the most. And his poor mom and his family, same deal, can't find him. He was walking home at like 1:30 and he's gone. Still haven't found him.
Right, he was in outside of Vancouver.
Yeah, Sun Peaks.
Sun Peaks. I have Cam Loops, but yeah, I have him on my list. Yeah, missing. Where did he go missing? It was February
17th.
Yes.
Yeah, not long after Liam Colgan, right?
Yeah, he'll be found in water. Probably within the next month, is my guess.
Yeah, they have a lot of snow up there. People were speculating that he had fallen and he's covered in snow. But they brought in dogs and all these like really expensive trained teams of dogs, and they haven't found anything. No scent, no nothing. And this is a very isolated place.
Sparsely populated, yeah.
Very sparsely populated, not very much. If he would have fallen down, he'd have been found already. And there's been a lot of, this year more specifically, there's been more of these drowning abductions in Canada than I've seen. Winnipeg, Thunder Bay, obviously, Toronto, Ontario, but definitely more this year. In fact, there was a guy a month before Ryan Shatuka at about 2 hours away. Same deal, walking home by himself and vanished. And this was in Cross Lake. He was also an Indian fellow. And they found him under snow like a month later. No cause of death, same way.
One that I want to talk about is another European one that I'd forgotten, which was Ross Hanlon, last seen January 19th in Vienna, found in a canal a week later. Do you remember Ross Hanlon?
Vaguely. So many.
Yeah, but that's another European one. This is another one that you find out about because he's Irish, so he speaks English. It shows up in the English media, but yeah. He was last seen at 2 a.m. January 19th near a canal which flows into the Danube River.
Wow.
He was at the Flex nightclub in the Augartenbrücke district of Vienna before he became separated from his two friends. Classic stuff, Separation. Yeah, Ross Hanlon is interesting.
That's interesting. It's like that's one of the similarities that people don't point out when they say, well, how could this be connected, right? And it's the MO, how the people are being radicalized some way on the internet, and people are being taught how to do this. Yes. And so much time, money, and effort is going into this. That is why people haven't been caught. I mean, the police don't really look. They're not digging very hard. I can say that pretty confidently. Sadly.
No, I agree.
Because I think that if people actually took cases serious, if they went back and looked on cameras, that these people don't know where every camera is. They would be picked up on certain cameras, but no one looks, so the evidence is overlooked.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's really amazing that they haven't gone through and looked at all these stuff. The only case that I can think of that they actually looked at all the CCTV stuff was Corey McKeague, but otherwise, no.
Yeah, but that's a great point you bring up. But they looked at everything, but he somehow escaped. I mean, that area where he is, that's called the Horseshoe. I mean, I personally think, I'm speculating, but I think he was meeting people. He was meeting people there.
Well, just like we talked about earlier, he was on dating apps,
He was lured. He was on a swinger app with his wife. I'm not sure. They weren't married, I don't think. No, they weren't married. But his girlfriend, who ended up having his kid, a poor girl, God bless her. But yes, I think he was lured there. He was meeting people there. And at the Horseshoe, that's the only, he left by car, somehow out that way.
His was a lot like what was it? What was the guy out of New York who the phone pinged south? His phone pinged him going north on the Corey McKeague thing. It was
they searched that landfill. They tried to say that he was in a garbage bin, and that's total nonsense. And they absolutely emptied that entire landfill and have found nothing. And that's because he's not there, obviously. I don't think he'll ever be found.
It was Kelleher out of Boston whose phone pinged south of the Charles River, and then he was found in the Charles River.
Oh yeah, a lot of people. Colin Finnerty, same way.
Yeah.
His phone pinged 9 miles north, and somehow that was never explained either. You know,
Yeah.
Must have been alcohol.
It was alcohol. The alcohol made him get in a car, drive 9 miles north, turn around, then be found face down in some random, pasture or something like that. Oh, that's another strange case. These Colin Finnerty is something else.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a chip on my shoulder. If I sound bitter, I'm really over people denying what's going on. I'm frustrated with the lack of concern and how much people go out of their way to make excuses for what's happening, and I don't understand the rationale. I mean, it's disappointing. I don't know if it'd be better than to just leave people alone or to attack people publicly.
I don't know either, to be honest with you. I'm surprised too. Like, I've had people look at my documentary, which is 3.5 hours of evidence, and still go, I don't see a pattern. I said, well, you're not going to see anything. You probably can't see the ocean if you stand out and look at the Pacific Ocean. You couldn't see it because in that movie, I just keep showing the same thing over and over. Every one of those victims ended up in water, So I don't, there's some people who are just joking around. I don't know what to say. So I understand where your position is, though.
Yeah, I try not to waste time arguing with people anymore who are willfully ignorant, I would say. Right?
That's a very good idea. I should adopt that myself,
It's hard. I do want to slap people sometimes, but I will say that a lot more people are working these cases now than there was 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
Totally agree, yes.
I mean, there are people working on these cases in these places in America that hopefully one will be the one that burst the dam besides yours. Yours was the first documentary to say anything post-2008, which this has not stopped then. It only has gotten bigger.
Worse, yeah. I mean, many, many more cases. Yeah, I think there'll be a moment there where they'll go, well, this is, and I suggested that in the documentary. Look at these cases as murders, not as accidental drownings. Everything will change, Start investigating it with a much more intense, purview. But yeah, it hasn't stopped. I mean, what we're talking about right now. Here's another case. Do you remember Rory Cattermole? That was another one out of Essex.
Yes.
There was another one in Essex too, before him, and his name was. I'm going to find his name. Wasn't Stan Azuski? Casper Blackburn. No, Casper Blackburn was Manchester. The Essex case, I think, was it Blake Mars? No. There's another one there. I can't remember. But yeah, Essex is a hotspot. That's Essex and Bristol. There's a lot of stuff going on down there.
Oh, Bristol, right? Amsterdam, France, Germany, Italy.
I had one
definitely.
Wits Penninck in Amsterdam.
Yeah, again, a lot of the victims in Amsterdam, I'll point this out because most people don't know, but their zippers have been found down. And if you've read a lot of these stories, that's a common theme in America, some other places, Thunder Bay, where they've had these murders.
The one I was trying to remember in Essex was a guy by the name of Dex Johnson. Do you remember Dex Johnson?
Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was found in water. Out at night.
On the way home from a pub?
Yeah,
right?
A pub. He crossed over a river, and then he was found downstream from a spot that he was, it's just in a place that wasn't practical. Dex Johnson that was another case.
Wasn't practical.
I mean, it wasn't ideal. There's no way that he could have gotten there. Another way was did we talk about James Corfield? I think we did. I remember Corfield. That was one. That was the kid at He was the kid at the farming thing in central UK.
Oh yeah, I absolutely remember. There's so many there. It's unbelievable. Like you just said, Bath, Bristol, Manchester, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, spread out through the UK. I mean, so big. It's tragic, you know. I mean, that probably Corey McKee's case is probably the biggest active case there, yes. Right?
Huge on Facebook, like a massive amount of followers and people interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to talk to his mom,
Nicola.
Yeah, I mean, I admire her so much. I mean, she's so tough and she's done so hard. She's done so much. It's sad that they haven't quite put together what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad that you'll never get an answer. That's probably the worst thing of all, you know. Like, at least you want an answer. I suspect that he's no longer among the living, but, like, what happened to him? I've always speculated in that case is that the guy who empties the bins was the abductor, you know? I wonder if they ever checked that guy out.
Possible, but I think it would be more than one person abducting him, you know, and if that guy's doing a job, I don't think he was ever in a bin. I think he went in someplace and met somebody where he felt comfortable, like so many of these cases where we're talking about Tim Cunningham earlier, CDC worker, Dakota James. These guys think they're in a safe place. They're meeting people they kind of know, and they are walking into a viper pit. And I think that's exactly what happened to Corey McKee. You know, it looks like how come he was sleeping, that he was drugged. You know, fell asleep. He was at a gay
bar. He was bisexual.
Right.
He fits the full profile, yeah. And I think that there was one or two cars that they never identified that came out of that horseshoe. Barry St. Edmunds, yeah.
There was a blind spot right there.
Yeah.
They don't talk a whole lot about, but
they show it in the video of him. The last video of him is him walking into the so-called horseshoe. But never what happened in there.
It's not the only case where people have seen cars on camera. Again, about police. I mean, just off the top of my head, the Anthony Arena case, which is very important to me, in New York, where he left a nightclub and there were two cars going down the wrong way on a wrong way street, right where he was walking at the time, and none of that was ever followed up with on the police.
Yeah.
It was on the island. Possible people could have had to take the tolls to get on the island. They could have gone back so many ways to find people, and the police could care less in New York.
Yeah, it's a remarkable one, too. And he was found in the Hudson, which is the opposite side of the Manhattan Island that he was on last, which is highly impractical for him. Actually, there's kind of like a spot in New Jersey where so many bodies have ended up, you know, coming down the Hudson River that you would think these guys would go, there's something fishy about this.
Oh, a ton. Yeah, he was actually found in a creek off of the Hudson, like even worse, like a very small, shallow spot. Pretty interesting. Yeah.
Do you have any other recent cases or anything like that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of cases here in Georgia. I would say probably 10 possible victims in the last 6 months here in Georgia, all in the same area, men, different ages, all being found mysteriously in water. I put them on a map. I do that a lot. They were all, both times that he would heat up in like one spot. And there were 5 victims in a couple weeks, and then it slowed down.
Talk for 2 minutes, okay? Talk for 2 minutes.
Okay. And I was going to say that, there's been a bunch of different cases here in Georgia. There's missing men. There was a man who's vanished from the Kennesaw Mountain, Georgia. His name is David Blake. Same thing. He has vanished. He was at Kennesaw Mountain. They found his car with his keys and his phone inside his car. He has vanished. That was in March. He has not been seen since. There was another young man, a 23-year-old young man who was named Cameron Roney in LaGrange, Georgia, and he was found in a pond. His poor mom and dad in the back of his car, and his cause of death was accidental drowning as well. They don't know how he got into that pond. They don't know why his car was in that pond. His parents are looking for answers, and there have been none. We're almost at 100 victims possibly here in Atlanta, Georgia.
That's amazing. Sorry.
Almost 100 in Manchester. But the worst part is that people are actually talking about the murders in Manchester. Nobody except me has been talking about the murders in Atlanta. And the record for murders, Wayne Williams murdered like 30 children, I believe, somewhere around there. I forget the exact number. We're way past that. And it hasn't even won. Nobody's paid attention. I've warned the media. I mean, and it's young male after young male, but it's other victims too. But I mean, it's pretty shocking how many people have been. And I think people are finally starting to wake up. I absolutely look forward to shaming the media here in Atlanta and their lack of priorities, and just basically being uninterested in body after body after body after body. I will point out that drownings for 3 straight years went up in Georgia the last 3 years. And there were all these articles about why are drownings up? Why are drownings up? And the drownings were up because they were murders.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you have those copycat murders all over the country that are like that. But, it always goes back to the case you told me about, Naz Rahimi, outside of Atlanta. That's just an incredible case that could break this whole thing wide open that I think the police didn't investigate properly.
No, not even close. Yeah. I'm not sure if the last time we talked, but I went and visited the park, Morningside Park, where Naz Rahimi was found, and investigated myself. And it always opens my eyes when I go to a crime scene where one of these men are found, and you can see if this was really an accident, if it was possible. And this area was no way. I mean, it's a very isolated place where this happened. And the story that his friends concocted, which was picked up by the local media, and they were heralded as heroes. Their story is absolute crap.
Agreed.
I mean, for a lack of better words. Nas had so much trauma that the police said that he looked like he had been hit by a car and had collapsed into the river. And the river there was very shallow. It would have been impossible to miss if he'd have been in water one day. Where he was found was a half a mile from any road. Any road. It would have been impossible. The police investigation is preposterous again.
And he fits the profile of all the victims, hanging out at a gay bar, young, healthy guy,
good looking,
mixed up in the wrong crowd from somewhere else. It's a shame. Yeah, that's just an incredible case.
Brutal people, just absolutely brutal. You can't find the media scrubbed any reference of what I just said about the trauma. That came out immediately. That's what it was reported right when his body was found. You can't find that anywhere on the internet.
It goes back to the victim zero, McNeil. They didn't find out about the torture for a decade. So yeah, I mean it's just when you look at all these cases, it's incredible.
It's sickening.
Yeah.
That's
so
something that really upsets me. I've said this before to you that people aren't even looking, and these poor people are in a viper pit, for a lack of a better word, and people don't even care because it's men. And they're just like, oh, they just ran off. Oh, boys will be boys.
Right.
And, man, you couldn't be farther from the truth.
No, I agree. No, it's something unique in the sense that people aren't addressing the totality of it in ways that, if there were women, it would be different.
No, I mean, let's just talk about real quick about all of the places that this is happening, and that there are people who are dedicated to fighting this like we are, and yet there's no national story about all the places that this is happening, right? I mean, I can just tell you right off the top of my head, here in Atlanta, bad, right? Georgia,
Boston,
very bad.
Yeah. Georgia,
Panama City, Florida,
bad.
Over 10 kids. That's no one's picked that up. Ithaca, New York, extremely bad.
Right.
New Jersey, really bad. Minneapolis,
New York,
yes. Chicago,
yeah.
Columbus, La Crosse, right? San Francisco, Seattle. There's
a few here in LA. Yeah.
Long Beach. Long Beach is
Portland,
the hot spot.
Portland, Vancouver,
Manchester,
yeah.
Bath,
Bristol.
What's going on in Thunder Bay? They've had over 10 kids. Same deal in Thunder Bay. What's going on in Winnipeg? That's another hot spot. British Columbia, Ottawa, and all the stuff we talked about in Europe. I mean, just each one. If you Googled each one of those spots and read about the victims, I mean, it's clear as day. What's happening.
It's amazing. So we're coming to the end here, Jim. We've done about 52 minutes. How can people contact you or find you through social media?
You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter page is Smiley Face Cult at drowningvictims.com. You can email me at jimsmith, sfk at gmail.com if you'd like. Or I'm on Facebook, and I run the group Smiley Face Killers America, where we post victims as we see them that I find suspicious, or other people who help me send me cases. And there are a lot of people who really make up Jim Smith. I'm not just a singular person. I'm many people behind me who help me see cases and investigate crime scenes and run down leads. And there are a lot of people who are very passionate, other than just you and me, William.
Great. So they can find you on Twitter, Facebook, Jim Smith, and this phenomenon is still taking place. So something tells me Jim and I will be together shortly to talk about future cases, which is unfortunately sad. So anyway, Jim Smith, thank you very much for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, William.